Our first stop is the Berlin Lodge. This building was built in the late 1800s. The Berlin Lodge is a popular building long recognized as camp headquarters. This lodge has served throughout the years not only as camp office but also as a kitchen, trading post, and as staff quarters. Now let's go see some other sites in camp. Later today we will visit inside the lodge.
As I said, this is 1944. I got this from the lady. The lady had a brother who died in World War II.
Today we have an Eagle project underway. Jonathan Pans is retiring over 250 flags to the veterans of foreign war for proper disposal.
25 flags. I thought I couldn't get 25 flags, but I had to go with 206. Now I'd like to give these flags to the veterans. And our next stop is the Longhouse, home of Uwharrie Lodge 208. The lodge is a part of a national brotherhood of honored campers known as the Order of the Arrow. Uwharrie Lodge 208 was founded in 1941.
I'd like to tell you a little bit about our waterfront. This is the lower lake. On this side of the lower lake is where the troop swims and free swims were carried out. On the far side of the lower lake is where swimming merit badge and life-saving merit badges were taught. On the upper lake, which is just through the woods, rowing and canoeing merit badges were taught.
Right now we're at the Archery Range where a lot of scouts have learned to shoot a bow and learn a lot about the most, I guess, one of the most primitive methods of hunting a man has. And also this is where many of the boys have passed off their merit badge, learned to shoot a bow and pass off. And actually it's one of the toughest merit badges one of the boys can get. So why don't we work with some of the boys today and learn and teach them a lot about archery.
Today we are at Camp Uwharrie's Rifle Range, where for many years Scouts have been coming under qualified rifle range instructors to earn merit badges and other such marksmanship awards. Also on this range, the rifles that are being used by the summer camp Scouts were donated by our troop, Troop 68, in the memory of Jack Barksdale, the first Scoutmaster of Troop 68.
And fire when ready.
We're here at Comiton Circle, better known as the Council Ring. It was built in 1975 for a special OA conclave. From then on out, it was used for our summer campfires and OA tap-outs.
I'm Dick Newbill, Scoutmaster of Troop 68. We're here at our present dining hall. This dining facility was built in 1959 after Council Executive Bun Hackney started a fundraiser for $50,000 to replace the dining hall destroyed by fire in 1957. Let's go in and talk to Shirley and Alfred Giles. Shirley's been a cook for several years in the dining hall, and Alfred is our camp ranger. This is Alfred Giles, the camp ranger, and his wife Shirley, who's been involved with cooking here at Camp Uwharrie since 1983. Off and on, I think Shirley's cooked about 3 full summers. Of course, Alfred has been a camp ranger since the fall of 1983. Alfred, I know this building has been here since 1959. The previous building was up in the parking lot area.
It's up where the parking lot area is now, but in the spring of 1957 when it burned, just a couple of weeks before summer camp opened, and the National Guard brought in a field kitchen and prepared food out of the field kitchen for the summer of 57, 58. Food was prepared up there in the field kitchen. And then in the spring of 59, the dining hall here was open to serve the kids out of it. There's probably been several little short, snotty-nosed boys that's run through these doors here, and if we could get them out today, it'd probably tell you more tales and stories than what I could.
I'm sure. How many in an average camp season do we wind up feeding here? Alfred or Shirley, either one.
Are you talking, Dick, about this summer camp? Or are you talking OA, co-parent weekend?
Okay, in the summer camp we normally we'll have 300 to 400.
Yeah, approximately 400.
Okay, and then throughout the weekends in the fall and spring, probably another 1,000 or more.
Well, you can look at the 2 seasons of co-camp that we do here, co-parent weekend. We'll feed approximately 1,100 to 1,200 people 3 years each weekend. OA functions and other functions, I'd say we probably, my camp and summer camp, will average running 2,000 to 3,000 kids.
A lot of meals. They all good nourishing meals, just like the one we just finished, as a matter of fact.
We enjoy it. Cooking, churning out no foods. I guess that's one of my pastime hobbies. You look at me and tell that. But, you know, another thing that's probably interesting here in the dining hall, which in the 80s, as far as I can remember, either the late 70s or early 80s, is the first major overhaul job that we went into it. And then in 1980, 81, we replaced the floor. And if you look on the pictures, you can see there's 2 different color tiles on the wall back here. The blue tile was done in 80, 81, along in there, and the floor was back here. Then in 84, we finished the top, replaced the ceilings, painted everything, tiled the dining area, floors, painted everything out there, which was major. Probably the most extensive remodel work we did in here.
Alfred, in your 10 years of ranger here at camp, how about give us a couple of examples of some of the more unusual occurrences?
Well, probably first of all, in the summer of '85, we left here on Saturday. The kids left Saturday morning. We completed up what I had to do and left to go out for supper on Saturday night. It had been fairly dry. This electrical storm came up that evening. We got back in about midnight. The dogs were barking, nothing abnormal about that. But when I got up on Sunday morning, I came to go to the shower house to do a couple of things. And when I opened the gate, the old cook's cabin that used to sit to the right of the entrance was no longer there. It was just smoldering with smoke boiling.
It was burned to the ground during the night.
Burned to the ground, and had not been for the rain we had, probably would have cleared the whole camp out. But that one is one of them. And another thing that just happened this past summer is the water tank at the top of the end that blew out of it. I had just came down off the front of that tank checking the water pressure less than 5 minutes before that end blew out. There was a ladder leaning up against the front of that water tank. It blew it all the way across the drive to the other side. Cross ties that's laid on the ground, moved them plumb to the other side. It cut a light pole off about 8 inches in diameter, shifted the weld heart and bursted it. So
Quite a bit of force.
there's a lot of force that came out of it.
Alfred, Shirley, certainly appreciate your time.
Thank you.
The Berlin Lodge right now, we've got a museum set up in here at our last Camporee, and we'd like to tell you some things about it today. And this is Roddy Hobbs, who's is going to kind of take us through all the memorabilia that we've got in here today. Roddy, why don't you tell us about some of these things?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about camp. We started buying the land piece by piece in 1922, and over the years we built it up to about 250 acres, and now it's sandwiched in between High Point and Greensboro, and we're being squeezed out by the communities, and we're moving to another location with a lot more land and hopefully a lot more scouting adventures, because it's farther out into the country.
Now, what was the first year the camp opened?
Started buying the land in 22, and they say they actually had a camp around in 22, 23. I talked to a man today that came out here in 22. He lived in close to Moxville and actually had to walk part of the way and took a horse-drawn wagon the rest of the way, and came out here, and that was 1923. One part of scouting in Camp Uwharrie is collecting patches and stuff. They didn't have patches during the 20s, but we've got some from the 30s.
I noticed you got a lot of patches in here. We'll take a look at those.
Okay. This patch is from the 30s. It's an honor camper patch, and this one is for earning 5 merit badges. And then the only patch they gave out to the regular scouts were these, which came along in the 40s. And with the Depression and the hard times, they didn't have a lot of patches. During the 70s and from here down, they had patches all the time, and they were easier to produce, and the money was a little bit more plentiful than the Depression times and the war times of World War II.
And the guys today attending will get a patch, won't they?
Oh yes. If you want to see that, we'll move over to the other side and I can show you that patch.
Okay, let's move around over here.
Oops, yeah, right here it is. You can get a close up of that.
Okay.
Now here's the you ready? Farewell to Camp Uwharrie. It's the Camporee patch from 1922 to 1990. This is our last event being held out at Camp Uwharrie. Official council event.
Okay, now what are the patches up here on the wall behind us?
That's a set that's going to be permanently displayed at the new camp and locked in behind glass, so it'll be protected from the weather. The patch collection you just looked at was one that we carry around from activity to activity and display.
Okay, now these are OA patches as well as Camporee patches?
Yeah, this is anything Uwharrie Council.
Okay.
They cover a broad range: Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Order of the Era, everything.
Okay, and on the top here we've got some shirts, right? These represent the camp shirts?
Yeah, T-shirts from almost all the activities at Camp Uwharrie and other activities.
Okay, you notice the sign that says Camp Bun Hackney. I understand at one time the camp was called Camp Bun Hackney.
Yes, Mr. Bun Hackney was graduated from Carolina in 1927, I believe it was. Became council executive that same year and dedicated his entire working life to Uwharrie Council. He retired from Uwharrie Council in 1969, and not many people will do that. One thing that I think is real important here is a display on the wall of the first Eagle Scout Uwharrie Council. That's the first Eagle Scout Uwharrie Council, Fred Ingram, which was presented to him in the mid-20s, 1920s.
So we came over just for a couple hours.
The uniform beside it is a 1935 National Jamboree uniform. And they didn't hold that jamboree because of, I believe it was a polio epidemic, and so they canceled it, and no one ever went to it. They did hold another jamboree 2 years later in 1937.
Okay, I'm Don Raker with Troop 68, and right now we're talking to Carl Bailey. Carl's been with the Uwharrie Council Scouts for really years, and we thought we would talk to him a little bit about Camp Uwharrie and get some of the history of camp. Carl, what can you tell us about Camp Uwharrie?
Well, of course, a lot of it's hearsay to me, but I was around a long time ago. About 1922-23, Bun Hackney, who was a former scout executive here, contacted the people who own High Point Fishing Club, and it consisted of approximately 50 acres, of which the Berlin Lodge was right on the edge of it, and it ran down to what we now call a swimming lake. And of course, that was not very much camping area, and it remained that way pretty much for a while until Bun put together parcels of land. For instance, where the old, you remember where the old health lodge was across the road from the lodge? Well, that was the first piece of property that they got. They got 3 acres there. They paid $13 an acre for 3 acres to give them a little room around the lodge and behind it. And then a little later on, they bought 30-some acres, approximately 30-some acres on the other side of the swimming lake up to what was called then the Red Road or Pomona Road. And then we accumulated...
now this started about 22, you're saying?
22, 23, and of course Bun Hackney, some of this he bought himself and retained title to until the scouts were able to pay it for it, because they didn't have any money.
Now, was he like the scoutmaster?
He was a scout executive.
Okay, scout executive.
Well, then there was up where we cut the old dairy barn, you know, that's up in the woods up close to the upper edge of the camp, of course, close to Guilford College Road.
Right.
There used to really be a dairy there, and we were worried about all that runoff from that dairy barn coming into the upper lake, so they decided to buy that, and there was about 20-some acres involved in that. Mr. Idle on that, and we bought that. And then up where the upper lake is, there was about 50-some acres, and it was auctioned off. And Bun went to Greensboro, and he and a lawyer from Greensboro were bidding on it, and they were the only 2 people bidding, and he went over and talked to the lawyer and said, "What do you keep bidding on this for? If I put this to Boy Scout camp." He said, "Why didn't you tell me? Shut up, go ahead and bid." So he bid it off, and I think they paid about $15 an acre for that. And that pretty much made up the bulk of the camp. There were some small parcels that he bought from other people, and you got to realize that during the Depression, there was a period of 7 months, approximately 7 months, that the Uwharrie Council didn't pay Bun Hackney any salary whatsoever. And so he bought a lot of this land knowing they were kind of financial condition we're in, just let them use it till they could pay for it, and he just transferred title to them. So he did a great job with it. Now, the camp, as I knew it first, I camped there for the first time in 1933. The lodge, of course, is always set where it is, and right across directly in front of it was the council ring, behind where the old water tank used to sit that collapsed here last summer.
Yeah, right.
Behind that was the council ring, and about where the parking lot is was the dining hall. And it burned about around the early 1950s, I believe. But we put the new dining hall up about 54, 55, somewhere along in there. But it was a wooden building, and it burned. And we had cabins back where Cherokee, where some of the old cabins are approximately where I've always been, but we had others. In fact, we camped in cabins all together back then. We had, and the counselors in the 30s, most of them were college students, because these guys couldn't get a job anywhere. They were looking for somebody to give them a free meal and a little lodging during the summer, so they'd come from the college and work on the staff. And we usually had a pretty good crew. And the first year I went to camp, it cost $5 for a week.
Is that right?
And
how old were you then? You remember?
I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
12 years old. So we had a great time. We swam in the buff, by the way, back in those days, kind of like they did in the early days of the wild. We didn't have to wear a swimsuit, but we didn't have to worry about any women being out there either because it was strictly a man's domain.
How far do you think, in that time, the nearest house was? You know, right now those houses you can see in the woods.
There was a house right up at the entrance where you come off of Gilpin College Road. There was a house sitting right there. You can tell by the way the trees are planted. There used to be a house right in the center of that. There was another house to the right of that they moved. You remember there was a white house down the road to the right there that they moved when these other people started constructing houses. And that's pretty much it. There wasn't.
So it was pretty much in the wilderness.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course the old caretaker's house sit back there where Alfred Giles' new house sat then. Jack, I can't think of the guy's name, Jack, he was at our, incidentally, he came to the last Camporee, I believe. I know he came to the last OA Fall Fellowship that used to be there, out there before Alfred took over. But it was, it was a great, camping. We had a lot of fun. We did most of our camping in the early days on both sides of the road that led down to the lake, in the woods back in that area. Then, right after World War II, we did all our camping up close to where the dairy barn is. As a matter of fact, we camped up there way too long, as far as I'm concerned, because every time you go camping, you didn't know where to dig in a train. There've been so many people out there.
Well, now the campsites they have now, are they basically the same as they were?
We didn't have any up where, all that's been built up where Zuni and Apache and Tanakita, that's all been built since, actually that's been built in about the last 15 years. The road that comes back behind the dining hall goes up that hill. We put that in there one time. I believe we had an ordeal project for the OA, and we built that road up through there then. That cabin that was built when Ben White he was a scout executive, district executive in Lexington, and was in charge of all the cooking. And in the old days when Bun was here, all your scout executives came to summer camp. And one was waterfront director, and one was the program director, and one was the camp director, and one was in charge of the medical part of it. So had everybody a job, and more or less everything kind of shut down. When you came to camp as a scoutmaster, you were part of the staff. They would ask you to teach a certain job when you came, and you participated right along with everybody else. We changed it, I think, for the good, since we like for the scoutmaster to be in charge of the troop now. Some people think they go out there and the camp's in charge, but they're not really. The troop is still in charge of the boys that are there, and the staff is there to guide and help them. And we've had some great people along the way. I can name a few people that I camped with a few years ago. Some of you have been around a long time. Bill Curry, the Mouth of the South.
Oh yeah, I remember him. I went to Carolina.
He was an old tent mate of mine in the first year I was out there. Bill and I graduated from high school together. Bill Connor, who lives in High Point. We had a whole group of people there. I'd like to tell you about some of our early camporees we had out there that I can remember early. The first badges, if you remember, they weren't nearly as fancy, the patches, and they were all felt and embroidered on felt is what they were. And one year, I think it was 1935, they gave a double A. The only year they ever gave a double A. And the patrol, and they gave it by patrols, not by troops. Each patrol camped separately from everybody else. And you could have a 4 patrols, each one would be an A, B, and C, D, as far as that goes. I never saw many D's, but I did see some C's. But they were pretty tough judging you then. And the way you got to go to that camporee, though, we had a district camporee, and you had to qualify. You had to score so many points on the district camporee, so you could go to the council camporee. But the idea was that back then, everybody that could went to the camporee. It wasn't now whether I don't know whether I want to go or not. Everybody went that had an opportunity to go. We didn't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
I think scouting had a leg up on most organizations for boys in those days because you did things that nobody else did.
Right.
And you had the opportunity to take guys out and do things, and that's one of the reasons I was a member of it. My dad died when I was a little boy, so I joined so I could be around men and other boys. My brother and I, we both enjoyed it a lot. Of course, everybody knows my brother Sid with ton and rotund, but since he lost so much weight, I guess I'm just going to be ton now. Camp Uwharrie is a real unusual place over the years. Most of the guys that are active out there now have been either active there or active in other councils when they came. We don't have, we've got a lot of new guys this year that something I've seen in a couple of troops that I haven't seen for a long time. We've got some older fellows who never were in scouting who have become interested in it because of the boys and are taking a real active part in it. That bodes well for the organization, I think, that they're doing something right.
Well, that's kind of how I got into it, through my son's activities.
Well, you know, during summer camp, we were asked about why we were leaving and so on and so forth. And of course, I said, you know, I got a lot of memories from out there, but you know, you can't live off of memories. You got to have real live things to go by.
Right.
And it's just gotten to the point where we cannot give the boys the program there that we can at another place. That's the reason we're moving, not because we don't like the place or don't like the area, and that doesn't have anything to do with it. It's just that we can have a better program when we move to this new camp.
Well, Carl, I really appreciate your comments, and I think everybody enjoyed what Carl has told us today because he's got experiences that probably go around 50 years with Camp Uwharrie, and we really appreciate you coming to tell us about it.
Well, thank you very much. Glad to be here.
This morning we're on our way to the last chapel service at Camp Uwharrie, and I just thought I'd stop here and let y'all see this black walnut tree. This black walnut tree has a lot of lore behind it, and Irving Berlin was rumored to have written God Bless America here many years ago. This used to be like a private camp, private area, and he was visiting here, and you can see how such a beautiful, picturesque place behind us here with a lake and all. It would have been a very inspiring thing. We just thought y'all would like to know about the black oak tree where Irving Berlin was supposedly wrote God Bless America. So let's go on now and move on down and go to the last chapel service at Camp Uwharrie.
Everyone, please stand.
Sweet land of
For the memories we have of many days and nights spent at Camp Uwharrie, we thank you, O Lord. For the leaders who have guided us and shaped us here in the ways of scouting, we thank you, O Lord. For the lives of those now absent from us who helped to make Camp Uwharrie a truly great scout camp, we thank you, O Lord. For the many friends we have made at this camp and the good times we have had together, we thank you, O Lord. For the beauty of these surroundings and all that they have taught us about nature and respect for the good earth, we thank you, O Lord. For the campfires, the lakes, meals together, and flag raising, for songs, rifle smoke, and the smell of tents in the rain, we thank you, O Lord. For merit badges earned, archery and games, for swimming, boating, and fishing, for stars on clear nights and Berlin Lodge, we thank you, O Lord. For the freshness of pine woods in the early morning, for war paint and drums, for the log house and trading post, we thank you, O Lord. For Camp Uwharrie, for everything it has meant to us, we thank you, O Lord.
Move.
Got it. And salute. On the go.
Stop.